the apostolic ideal, which is one of the readings, and you can find that on the front page of Dominican Idaho. Go to the formation tab and look it up there. But it is a reading that captures a lot of the spirit of St. Dominic and the charism of the order, so I encourage you to check it out. It's called The Apostolic Ideal of the Early Americans by Eugene Cassiope, and it talks about the apostolic ideal of St. Dominic, and then there's an outline attached to that as well that will help you go through that. And so I'm not going to talk about that at this time. I just encourage you to look at it. Joshua was going to give a talk on this, but he got called to work. The next thing I'm going to do is talk on the structure of the order of preachers. Just give a little bit of talk on the rule of St. Dominic and the provincial particular directory and the local bylaws, and just the organizational structure. Obviously, the head of the order is the master of the order, is the head of the order, and is a successor of St. Dominic. And his name is, he was just elected this past year. His name is Gerard Francisco Parco Timiner. And he got elected earlier this year, I think at the General World Chapter that was in Vietnam in February. And then at the close of his election, COVID hit like a storm. But he is a Filipino, and now he sits in Santa Sabina. And Santa Sabina is
same place that was given to Dominic back in 1218.
And there's quite a bit of history there, so if you ever make it to Rome again or first time, check it out. They'll give you a tour of it. I haven't been there yet. But this is where the curia is, the curia of the order, and most of the promoters of the order at the worldwide level sits. And of course, the promoter general, that's not, I think, is the promoter of the laity at the worldwide level is there too. Of course, governs us. And that's it. That's all in Rome. And the world itself is divided into what they call provinces. And they have jurisdiction over the various friars and lay people involved within that province. Now the nuns are connected, but not directly through the province. So the congregation of nuns may be around, for instance, the United States and under a particular part of the order of preachers. But particularly the friars are connected to the laity directly, juridically, however you want to say it. Because they're ultimately everything that we do, our rule, our particular directory, any dispensations that are granted are given through the prior provincial of the province. Now you want to take in mind that the United States is made up of 4 provinces, and that's probably because there are a lot of third order here, or what they call lay fraternity here in the United States. Obviously there's the Eastern, which is St. Joseph, and the Southern, which is St. Martin de Porres, and the Central Province, which is called St. Albert's. In the Western Province, what is it called? Holy Name of Jesus. Of course, the best one of them all. Mexico as its own province. So the United States, which is rather rare because usually it's based upon national lines. So the Western province, just to focus in on that, is 13 Western United States, including 13, Canada, Hawaii, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, Utah, Montana, and Oregon, and Washington. That's Alaska. Alaska has in most of the states absent Idaho and Nevada. No, wait, wrong about that. Idaho, Montana do not have a house of studies or a priory. So there are no friars in Montana or Idaho. But when they start a priory or house of studies, they need, I've been told they want a minimum, the optimum is 5 friars or 3, a minimum of 3. I've been pressuring them, and it feels like it, it's just a den of noise. They don't get no response, but we want some friars here. You'd love to see them replace the Jesuits downtown.
Amen. So how many of us have to go down and walk without shoes and pray rosaries around?
I think what they need is just more, they need to, the Western province needs to grow.
Yeah.
I don't think they refuse to come to Boise. I think they just need, they've been struggling to just continue to staff the places that were already under their jurisdiction.
So how much funding do we have to raise to
That is
teach
actually one of the.
Dominicans so that they'll give it? Yeah.
Now, see this.
Really, it's about.
See, Alana is on top of it.
This is how this works. Okay.
It is, because the last 2 years, the chapter has sent a donation of a size that would get their attention. Why? Because, I'll be honest with you, we want the friars here. Because it will make a difference to us and to our children's children, right? And in that, it does make a difference. But at the top, just to get back to the head of the province is the prior provincial. He has his own council, which includes friars, and among those is the promoter of the laity for the province, who is Father Augustine Highlander. You haven't met him yet, but he's a great guy. He's not far out of being ordained, but he's about 6'20". Seriously, but he says mass. He lumbers over the altar. It's really cool. But he's a great guy. And if you ever want to visit with him, I'll happily send you his email. And he has heard my plea many times about getting friars here. But he is the promoter of the laity here in Idaho. On the Western United States, pardon.
And he'll talk to us.
Yes, oh yeah. He is one of the most active, engaged friars I've ever seen.
Well, he'd be the one to assign a religious promoter to our chapter.
Right.
And it would be the prior provincial who decide, we will start opening a priory in Boise. That would be Father Fano or something.
Yep.
So that's sort of beyond Father Highlander's authority. But Father Highlander is the one who says, yes, you guys get a religious promoter.
What is his position? He's
This,
Which one, Father Highlander? He's the promoter for the Dominican laity.
Yes.
Provincial promoter for the Dominican.
And what does a promoter for a lady?
Sorry, what do they do?
well, the name discloses a great deal of it, but it also is, he's there for us. He's the communication. Canonically, he's the communication between the prior provincial and us. He also makes things happen with the prior provincial. If you really want some attention, you go to him. He'll get that to the prior provincial. He's very active. And once this COVID thing, he said, breaks down, well, he'll be here to talk to us. And he's just a really good guy. Very intelligent and probably chapter. If you want his, he is responsible to us for, he's online or not, I haven't seen his name. But anyway, he's, again, one of those things where with COVID
releases is iron grip.
he is actually what we call a religious assistant, that's what it's called. But more accurately, he should be the chaplain. I think if the rule reflects what really goes on. But regardless, this is prior provincial, and then this is at the provincial level, the promoter of the lady, Augustine Highlander, and this is our chapter religious assistant, Father Peter Doe. Father Augustine is stationed in Seattle. Father Peter Doe is stationed in Holy Rosary in Portland.
For those of you who just became professionals, on a normal year, instead of having Father Dominic from St. John's, we would have had Father Peter Doe here to officiate professionals. It's impossible because they have a travel ban.
So Father James Morris no longer on.
He never was,
Oh.
but he's responded very quickly to us. And he's a friend, counting as a friend. And,
Sort of like a treasurer.
he's kind of like, he's the guy who raises funds. So when he came here for a youth conference back, I think 4 years ago through Apologetic, he got in touch with me and we had coffee and he came over to the house. I don't know if any of you were there, but he came over to the house and we had a get together. And there weren't a lot of people there, but it was a dozen people, and it was kind of last minute. I mean, literally last minute, and I was taking my dad's.
I mean, just earlier this year, he's the one who did the live stream with me.
Oh,
Yes, yes, yes.
he's
So he's a public relations, fundraiser, public relations guy. Yes.
I'm just gonna put his name up here,
What's the face of his-
but he doesn't have any position over our chapter.
He's really nice.
He is really an important part because I believe this man will be prior provincial someday. So this is the guy that we want.
He's in either Alaska or
I think in San Francisco,
Yeah, I think he's an Oakland.
he was visiting. I
Right.
friends with him on Facebook. He was
Yeah.
visiting Alaska and he was in the Northwest.
Alaska is very important to the seminarians because they all have to spend the summer up there or a season up there. And they get trained in the Dominican rite. All the young priests now, starting I think since about 2007, all of them have been being trained in the Dominican rite. Of course, that's the rite that survived Trent, the Council of Trent, and it dates back to the time of St. Dominic. So that's an important thing. Anyway, Father James Moore is a friend of our chapter. And I do want, as part of the chapter apostolate, I'd like to raise funds on an annual basis to send. In the last 2 years, I mean, just for the chapter's information, we sent them $1,000 each year. And that is collectively the chapter sends that off to them. Why? Because we want seminarians to be the fruit of prayer, and it takes money to do that. And we need to kind of put that out there. And at the same time, very subtle, but kind of not so in your face, but in your face message. We want you and I, And if we can see that in my lifetime, I'd be happy for them to come. So now this is the prior provincial over the western United States. And under these names and things, what's next? Of course, you have the chapters. You have priories and the Dominican House of Studies. And the Dominican House of Studies is, we have one here in the western United States, do
Well, St. Albans Priory probably fills that role.
we? Probably fills that role. The one that I was brought into was at the Basilica in DC of the Immaculate Conception, it's just right across the street. So if you ever make it to the Basilica, just walk across the street to the Dominican House of Studies, and it's connected to the Catholic University of America. And that's how I got connected to the Dominicans personally. And they just have a huge library, and a lot of seminarians live there, and they do a lot of their studies there and are connected to a seminary and to CUA. So when a guy gets into the seminary at DHS in DC, he is being educated, the access to some of the top schools in the United States. But I don't know if we have an official DHS here in the Western United States. But maybe that'll be Idaho. Huh? Anyway, that's where the priors house priests. They have, they like the optimum is a minimum of 5 priests and no fewer than 3 house. The priory right now in Seattle, I'm told, has 9 priests. So, which is good. I mean, and of course, yes, right, that's what we need. So, working this on is my goal. If you guys have any ideas, keep the words flowing, things like that as to that. But that is the next, the level below the prior is priories, prior-provincial priories, and houses of study. Now, obviously, here in Idaho, the lay people, or what they call the lay fraternities, I think a more accurate term, to be honest with you, this is the official word, but I'm not gonna, no apologies, I keep using the term third order because it describes who we are. There's nothing better than using terms that describe who we are, and this one is more accurate as far as, okay, so that's it. So the third order of St. Dominic, just so happens that the name was incorporated before these changes, so we can, so as a chapter we can continue to use the term. Anyway, long story short, it's lay fraternities or third order of St. Dominic or third order preachers. Now the first order, obviously, I think most of you would know, are the priests, the friars. The second order are typically the nuns. The third order, now this isn't universal, but it's the third order of the lay people. Traditionally, priests, lay priests, secular priests, more accurately, diocesan, secular priests could be a member of the third order. That's no longer true during the current rule, but deacons can be. So they can be incorporated into the third order. Bernie is a deacon, and if he ever desires to be, we welcome him in the order and be actually professed as such. Anyway, so this is the order, and here we have local. So we have, this is that, start over. Lay fraternities are individual chapters of each area. There's one in all major metropolitan areas in the western United States, except for Montana, and they are run by lay people, actually affiliated with the prior provincial and under his authority. And so the name of the local, obviously, is Blessed Margaret, and that name, it's a long story, but it's not that long a story. That name comes from when I graduated from law school. I came down to Boise. I worked for, actually, current senator from Idaho, Jim Risch, one of the two senators. He had a law firm, and I started working there. And a group of people started marching on the local abortion clinic and kind of getting in the way of people, and they accused him of, they arrested him for trespassing. And so they came to Risch knowing that he was a daily communicant and asked him to help defend them. So he walks into my office and says, "Here, would you like to do this?" So I said, "Sure, yeah." So one of the ladies, actually some of you know her, Diane Slater, gave me a first class relic of Blessed Margaret. And so when the chapter was formed, I kept it because she, when you their story. It's beautiful. But I'm not going to go too deeply in that. That's not what we're here for today. But we are the chapter, Blessed Margaret of Costello chapter. Was formed in October of 1997 informally, and formally the following year. We became incorporated in August 13th of 1998. And so that set off the organizational structure. And so you can kind of get this, just a glimpse of the organizational structure from the chapter to the province to the worldwide order itself.
So, before you become officially a chapter, you have a chapter in formation recognized by the province. When did you become a chapter in formation?
In October of 1998.
A fully recognized chapter
Right.
in 2004?
Correct. What they call canonically a pro chapter, which just means before. So we were a pro chapter from 98 through 2004. Prior to 1998, for that year, we were just a bunch of people having coffee together talking about St. Dominic. Anyway, in 2000,
Dangerous company.
to finish off the long story, in 2000 we became a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. We started a school for our little kids and other things. So we wanted to do all that. So anyway, that kind of explains the structure of the order. Does that help? Any questions? I can see some grinding.
You said in 2004 we became
A full chapter, which means we can, I'll get into that in a moment with regard to the rule, but that means we're not under the direct supervision of the president of the lay provincial council, which is another thing we need to talk about, which I left out. But between the chapters and the friars is what we call the lay provincial council, or the LPC. Ken Jersha is the representative from our chapter, and he goes once a year to Oakland when they hold the meeting they did this year. It's being planned for next year, and all the whole, everything is a go, God willing. And it's one member from each chapter shows up, and they have one vote. And I think now we have 36 chapters in the Western United States, and a few, probably 3 to 5 pro chapters in formation, and they're sprinkled throughout. The most recent one is a chapter out of, just left me. It's north of Sacramento, and it's a group of college students. 3 years ago, they were out. It's great. I mean, it's a great story. I wish I had. Anyway, they were out doing street evangelization connected to St. Paul Streets Evangelization. They wanted a sponsor. They heard about the Dominicans, so there's a bunch of college students that are now started this formation, this chapter formation in California. They have lots of them down there, but this is one of them. But anyway, they're really turned on the Catholic faith. They're really in your face, so to speak.
John,
Right with that word.
with the question on the first order, does that include as priests, they have brothers?
Yes, they have brothers and brother cooperators.
So that's all in the first.
Right.
And what about friars? Is that different?
Same thing. Same
It's
thing.
the
Friar.
same.
If you're a priest or a cooperative brother, both of them are called friars.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
they're all friars, okay.
Yeah, they're all friends. Any questions so far? Anybody online have a question? You have to turn your microphone on if you do. Great question. Brian asked, what does the lay provincial council do? The lay provincial council elects the executive committee. The executive committee is made up of the president of the lay provincial council, the vice president, which I'm currently serving for the West Western United States, the secretary, treasurer, and the prior promoter for the laity sits on that as well. So there's 5 members.
And there's a representative, LPIC,
Yeah,
whatever that.
the LIPC, that's the international one. We'll explain that next time. But the LPC elects staff for 3-year terms, staggered. My term will be up in next year. And no, yes, the president's is up next year too. So then they are responsible to hold the LPC, and the LPC is required to, it's a conference where they get together and they often have gatherings of people. Might have a theologian. Last time we had an exorcist in San Francisco in the talk, and then you couldn't hear the word. I'd love to have that man in here. He's just really fascinating. He's a deacon at St. Dominicans. Really fascinating. And so the other thing is they approve the budget for every year, and they also are responsible for the particular director, which will cover their most legislative lines.
They decide to recognize you as a chapter of formation. And
Yes.
decide, okay, you are now complete, we'll recognize you as a full chapter.
So, yeah, the Lay Prevention Council is responsible administration of the lake in Western United States. They meet once a year for 2 days, and that's it. And that's in their legislative business. They can legislate various things. They can pass resolutions. We passed a resolution once that just I was the peace and justice guy, and I got them to pass this one that was kind of, anyway, it's very controversial. It was about life and this kind of thing. It fired off controversy. Anyway, it was kind of fun. I'm kidding. But the point is that those various things are very much.
When you say you're trying to get Dominicans here, what do they do? Do they form a parish? Do they form a school? What do they do?
It's a great question. The reason why is because their chief charism is in the university. The preaching and teaching that they do seems to focus. It started with St. Dominic. He sent them to the University of Paris. That first may not have been successful, but they came back, went to Bologna. Thank God they went there. But he sent them back up to Paris. Had not sustained at St. He would not have St. Albert the Great or Thomas Aquinas, because both of them came out of that school, or at least were involved with that school. So the Dominicans, their charism is focused in on the truth, obviously, and so often the place that's done is at the universities. I've been told, when Father Mark Latorre came up here a number of years ago, he said, the university is where it's at. I mean, that's where we will come. If they come to Idaho, they can go to Boise State or one of the other universities. So I took him down to Boise State, showed him facilities there and the local parish and everything. And so that's their chief area. Part of the reason why is because the heart of youth are often open to the truth, despite what we say or see up the streets nowadays. So often they are open to it, and they are the ones that have the fire to go out into the streets, so to speak. And a lot of times they're just simply innocent, despite what's on it. So that's what I see. So if you see the Dominican Priory or Dominican House of Studies, they're usually connected to the university, to a university. The 2 examples is the one in Portland is connected to the University of Portland, which is a Catholic school, and the one in Seattle is literally on the campus of the University of Washington. The St. Albert's is right on the shadow of Berkeley in Oakland. One in I think not Tucson, but was it Phoenix? I think is right there at the university there. Phoenix. There is one in Tucson too.
Do they have any parishes? Just parishes?
Yes, they do. There Idaho, Boise State, they'd immediately be part of the campus. And you would see relatively quick a series of talks or things like that to engage the young people there, as well as the old people. Well, it would still stay there. And all of it is through the permission of the bishop, that's all. And when I'm saying that we want to replace the Jesuits, well, I've got a little bit of, well, there's a lot of truth in that. I'm not gonna lie.
80% rule.
Yeah, there you go, 80%. Okay, any other questions? Online, do you have any questions? Okay, and then we're gonna, obviously here, at the local level, at the chapter level, we have, this kind of gives you an idea what the LCC does. Answer your question. Prior to 2008, the canonical term for the head of the chapter was moderator. We use the term moderator. That was the official term. And it just like it feels like you're drinking morning cold tea when you say that term. But what is moderator? And so, in kind of in keeping with the religious tradition of the order itself, which goes way back, we used privately here the term prior or prioress. We've had a number of, we've had 4 priors and 4 prioresses. So the tradition here runs pretty deep, but we decided to use that term even if it was not canonical. And whenever we had to use the term moderator in order not to expose, we'd use that term. But in 2008, we modified the particular directory. And so I put on one of the, I don't know if any of you met Bonnie Fitzpatrick, but she was the LPC rep at the time. And she went to the meeting that year, and I wrote a letter for her as a defense of the term prior. And by the time, the next time they moderated and said it was only a term. That's where the LPC came full circle and said, yeah, why don't we use this? So it's permitted. They still use the term moderator in the rule or in the PD, but there's a little footnote that says prior or present or whatever term is applicable. So that was a victory. So that gives you an example of that term. We have it at the local level, obviously, there's the council, and we will see this, and there's the prior, sub-prior, or prioress, secretary, treasurer, LPC rep, hospitality, the person responsible to kind of make sure things go rightly and logistically, and members at large. We have 8 members, and then you sit on the council. We've elected you as the novice representative, and that's just to keep in touch. Having a voice on what's going on in the chapter. I want to hear that personally. And so the council's made up of 8 plus the, and the novice representative can do everything, even perform one of the offices. They just don't have, they can't give the vote for the meeting. I could, but I can't. But you have the voice of on the council in those matters. The council is set up that way, and it's confidential. When we meet, we talk about issues with the council. A lot of times it is, should we spend money here? That's like innocuous stuff. We approve an annual budget, that kind of thing. All right. That's the council. And then, any other questions? Okay. I'm going to start with the top again. With the rule. And the rule, the rule is what's applicable to the worldwide order and is applicable to every member of the laity in the order of preachers. And obviously it sets, it's a way of life as well as an organizational document. And just to hit the highlights a little bit, the rule applies standards as to what to progress in our lives as Dominicans, which include listening and reading some Holy Scripture, especially the New Testament, includes frequent reception of communion, daily Eucharist if possible, where possible, frequent recourse to the sacrament of reconciliation. There's a conversion of heart through the spirit of practice of evangelical penance, liturgical prayer, especially like we did this morning with the rosary together, and also in private prayer, the rosary meditation, and assiduous study. What does assiduous mean? Study. Now, does that mean you always have to be walking around with a book in your hand? Yes. No.
I prefer you not walk with the book in your hand, sit.
No. Actually, it kind of connects.
Unless you're on a treadmill and
That it connects to the reality of signs of the times. It's not only study of Dominican work, it's all of this and more. It's a view of the world through the lens. For St. Dominic. Now, what does that mean? That means that when I see things going on in the world, I can look at it through the eyes of Scripture and through how the charisms of St. Dominic may look at it and be discerning, because it's fairly clearly that Dominic's charisms are a gift and it's something to pray for. And assiduous study is constant study, not just in books and reading, but looking at the world and how you can see it around in light of Christ and St. Dominic. It also talks about the devotion of Saint to the Virgin Mary as well as St. Dominic and St. Catherine. Finally, and on the practical side, one of the most important is chapel meetings. It says periodical meetings on spirituality. That's what we're here for, because that's what develops some of the charisms of St. Dominic. One of the things one of you asked about the fraternities. In the rule they call them fraternities. We use the term chapter. Fraternities are under the jurisdiction of the order. Nevertheless, they enjoy the special autonomy of seculars governing themselves. So we do govern ourselves. We've had some presidents of LPC who try to control us, that we just go quiet. And it's not a matter of disobedience, because it's really critical, but it's kind of more accurately would be we have the right to govern ourselves. And more particularly, Section 21 says the local fraternity is governed by the president of the LPC and his or her council. These are fully responsible for the government administration of the fraternity. And it's no, wait, I'm wrong. Local fraternity. Local chapter is governed by in this case, the prior and his council. These are fully responsible for the government administration. So there is independence there. Michael?
There have been cases of LPC suppressing the chapter.
Right. Yeah, and those are set out in particular for reasons.
Because something's going not quite right.
Right. That happens. That actually, believe it or not, happened in San Francisco. I heard someone I can believe it.
it's not funny, but
I mean,
hilarious.
it was kind of in San Francisco in the mid-90s, and I don't have any personal knowledge of this, but they were kind of going off the rails a little bit. So the LPC stepped in and warned them, and the next year they suppressed them. And they're coming back. They started 3 years ago after a 20-year hiatus. They're reorganizing in St. Dominic's Parish. If you ever want to go see a parish, go to St. Dominic's. San Francisco is beautiful. The Western St. Jude Shrine is this is applicable to the Western United States. And it's just a real simple document. If you really look at it carefully, it's in some spaces double spaced, and it's not that detailed, but it's not a difficult read, and it does tell you how we govern ourselves within the realm of a particular directory and how it's formed. And I would encourage you, these are things to review. To be honest with you, when I was there the first time, I had to like, but it's important to realize that this is how things are set up. The members of in every chapter council, it sets up the minimum number and those kinds of things. So I encourage you to read it. It also talks about how to suppress a chapter in trouble and these kinds of things. So it's important. The particular directory also helps answer questions as to if you got a difficult member. For instance, 3 years ago, we had a member, without going into great detail, who wasn't attending. He was being very controversial and challenging. So the council voted to send him a letter asking him to make a decision. Do you want to stay with us or not? Left it to him. So I go through, and what I did was, in being authorized to send that letter, I sent it out to him. He'd been involved for a number of years, over 10, and said, here, look, if you want to be involved, start coming to the chapter meetings. We need you to have a certain attitude about it, and that type of thing. And if we don't hear from you, then consider yourself heard. The particular directory being expelled in order. And that I didn't like to do, but it was very clear that certain standards had been violated. And I also told him in the letter, we're here to work. We want to listen. If you have something to say, we are here to listen. This is not an act where we're trying to throw it out. Nevertheless, it was his choice. So it provides those kinds of disciplinary options when somebody is not, can be disruptive, that kind of thing. Now, in our chapter, we have 36 people. But when I was in DC, they had over 80 people in the local chapter. And there was as many different personalities I've never seen in my life. And ages ran from, 21 to 90. And everywhere in between, and every political and social perspective that shaped. And we would get into meetings, and I just have to duck. Because the discussions, but they were always charitable and diverse. So the reason I mention that is because sometimes personalities just get involved in these kinds of small congregations of people, and you just have to govern very carefully and with discretion and discernment. Any questions about the particular directory? Okay, the last thing are the bylaws. Anyone online have a question at all? Yes, okay. Discussion among themselves. The bylaws are online. All of this stuff is online in the founding documents. In the Third Order of St. Dominic, you'll see the bylaws, and these date back all the way to the beginning. They're periodically amended. The most recent one was in May of 2018, and it just really sets out what we do and fills in where the particular directory doesn't. And it's not that difficult. But it requires compliance with the law as well as the statutes of the order, and sets out a process for what the council can do in more detail for the particular directory as it fills in. Talks about the officers. Just to give you one example, is the prior or prioress has, once you set out a mission, you have Dominicans in the western United States and throughout the world, actually. And so it's been a good experience for us. And it's a mission. But the prior, to give you an example of the chapter, has the authority to kind of help guide that mission in the background. And it's all kind of said in the Bible. It's relatively clear. So an example of that, when we had the school, we had a prioress, her name was Stephanie, and when some of the things started turning kind of hard a little bit, she kind of stepped in and helped them kind of get back on course. So that was a really good example of how that particular provision of bylaws was used administratively to help things get back on lines. So anyway, there's a lot to this. I'm just going through it in the shadow of it, not okay. But are there any questions at all? The school is still on paper alive, but we had the school was at St. Dominic School. It's located at St. Matthews. Now, if you don't remember St. Matthews, it's because it doesn't exist. And it was an eagle, and it joined with Holy Apostles.
Holy Spirit, there's something in the church.
Yeah, Holy Spirit. And this is when Meridian was, this was 2001, and this is when Meridian was relatively still small. But, I'm no statistician, no demographer. Everybody in the room can tell you that Boise's going to grow. But the parish did it, or the diocese did it, time was joined. So when we had these rooms at St. Matthews, that all closed down. And then I approached the diocese, or required the parish priest first, about Holy Apostles, and he said, no, they're just not, they don't fit the education profile of Meridian. So we were left, and we just sat down and decided that if anybody ever wants to do something again, it's off to the races as far as I'm concerned. I'm all for it. But I put our kids in.
Where was the parish?
The parish was Eagle Road,